And thank you very much, Chairman Legg, for asking FEA to address this issue. FEA certainly is not opposed to testing when used to inform instruction and to improve teachers' skills. But in order for students and teachers to be successful, we have to find a balanced way between accountability with teaching and learning. I have two folks with me who are professionals in their school districts that I'm going to introduce. David is from St. Lucie County. He is a math coach, and he's also a testing coordinator.
With all due respect, ma'am, I'm not, this is not about introducing people. We have the parents' card here. We'll introduce them, but if you want to address these issues, we'll call them up and they can introduce themselves.
Okay, well, we were under the impression that we were all to do it together, so I'll give
It's
my...
not presented, but you feel free to give them.
I will give my conclusions of what our conclusions are, then I'll let David do his part, and then Missy do her part as well. It is much of what has been said by the superintendents. We believe that there is too much testing, and how we do it and what we do is most important. And so we have to focus on teaching and learning instead of testing. We need to reduce the number of required tests, both at not just the state level, but also at the local level as well. And we need to decouple the high-stakes consequences from assessments and thoroughly review the use of data. There is only one sound reason for assessments, and that reason is to provide teachers and parents with useful data so that you can enhance teaching and student learning. And so we need to make sure that what we're doing does just that. So when you talked about ways and differences that you'd like to see, a pause certainly is something that the superintendent's talked about that we should do. I differ a little bit with Superintendent Cavallo, and I think there are other tests out there instead of the one that we've started down the road with. We're not sure is whether reliable or credible or valid. And I think there are a lot of standard norm reference tests that we could go back to in order to use that to measure. And then when you're looking at tying student performance and teacher evaluations, all of that needs to be looked at because they're all so interlinked. And when you look at the research tells us that 50% of a student's test scores for a teacher evaluation is just a bit too much, and that mostly research tells us 30%. And so when you hear what's happening in our schools, and when you listen to what our two teachers have to say, I hope that you'll agree that, number one, we are way over the top with testing, with end-of-course exams, high-stakes testing, and how that moves the agenda for kids. We should be in the business of always making sure that our students have the best curriculum and the best way to achieve. And so back to Senator Clemens' point of what do we want our students to be? Do we want them to be college ready? We want our students to leave our public schools with a graduation diploma being the best citizen they can possibly be. Whether that means they want to go to college, whether they want to go to a technical school, or whether they want to go into a trade, all of us need to make productive citizens, and not everybody is college bound, but we want them to achieve the best that they can be. And so that would be based on some of the recommendations that we have.
Thank you. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I do want to clarify. I heard that. I just want to clear. Can you restate that? What did you say about, did you say you supported, I don't want to put that in your mouth, but that there was some validity in putting 30% of the data, 30% was a number you guys were looking at?
Yes.
Or that was your?
Yes.
Okay.
That is a number that we're looking at.
Senator Benaquisto?
Thank you. I'm getting Senator Dieter by osmosis here. I do have a question for you, and one of the challenges is that we do understand and are moving in a direction to act on the notion that there is excessive testing for our children, and the state plays a small portion of that role. But I'm curious, are you going to school board meetings and testifying there to ask local school districts to also look at their policies on testing, their schedules on testing, the content and quality of their testing materials? And because I think it is a partnership, and I really am curious if you and your organization are doing that as well.
Thank you. And the answer is yes. We are asking our locals to speak to their school boards to talk about that, because it is, we have a certain number of federal mandated tests, we have a certain number of state mandated tests, and we have a certain number that the locals are putting on. The bottom line, it's the kid in the seat that's taking all those tests. And the bottom line, it's just too much. It's just over the top. So yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Gates?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. Just two quick questions. You said that the FEA is not opposed to testing. Is that right?
That's correct.
Could you please indicate for the committee the legislation, the assessment and testing legislation, the accountability legislation that has been adopted over the last 12 years in the state that FEA has publicly testified in favor of? Just name the bills.
Well, off the top of my head, Senator, I can't,
Well-
and you know that, and you know the answer to the question.
The answer is you've never
Because
supported
we-
any testing or assessment
It's
or
the
accountability legislation that's ever been passed by the Florida legislature. Isn't that right?
That would probably be accurate,
Thank you very
if
much.
I might.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Because it's the manner in which we're using the assessments. It's just what I've just talked about. It's how we're using the assessment and how it's tied to everything that's linked.
Thank you.
And they are all intercoupled.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chair, just quick.
Quickly.
General
quickly.
question, if I can throw it
Quickly.
out there. Listen, I'm new to this committee as well, and we keep on hearing the issue of testing and testing. I understand you said there's too much testing. Is there a number out there on the actual amount of time that we should be spending on testing? Do you guys promote or have a position on the actual time that a teacher should be dedicated, or a school district should be responsible for dedicating to testing alone?
Well, what I would, I'm sorry.
Recognize.
I'm sorry. What I would say to that is specifically this. When we talk about testing, goodness gracious, teachers invented tests. That's what we do. But it's how we use those assessments that matter in the high-stakes manner of it and whether they're reliable and credible. So all along throughout the school year, teachers should be assessing their students in a multiple range of ways, through quiz, through chapter tests, all those types of things. But it's the excessive tests of every single course now has to have an end-of-course exam. Then we're having the high-stakes test of the new test that's coming to replace the FCAT. When you couple all of those things together, it's just way over the top. Kids are doing more test time than they are doing learning in the seat. So, I mean, it's what Senator Benequisto said. It's a partnership, and we have to figure out that medium that works for our schools.
I want to thank you. I do want to thank you for coming and being a partner and trying to find solutions on this.
Thank you.
I
We
thank for
appreciate the
taking your
time.
time today.
Right.
I do want to recognize, we have some individuals here with your group. I'd like to do them one at a time to give you ample time. Missy Rudd, thank you. Thank you for coming up here.
Thank you, Chairman Legg and Senators. It's good to be here today. As an experienced teacher, I can confirm what the National Research Council has to tell us, that assessment is integral to student learning and improved education. And summative assessments like FCAT and FSA are supposed to tell us what students can and cannot do, and they're supposed to help us target our instruction. And this can occur when we use reliable and timely data, but we just don't get much of that in our current system. I know that formative assessment is essential to my students' learning. It helps me know what they can do and what they cannot do, and it shows me what I need to reteach. But what distorts learning is the high stakes, and what distorts learning is the incomplete learning because these kids are testing, and the pressure to pass a test to graduate, and the unsupported uses of those tests. This high stakes process is what's driving education now, and it's driving teacher evaluation. So the Superintendent's Association and the Teachers Associations maintain that Florida testing, and I quote, does not provide a reliable and valid system solid enough to measure a teacher's performance. So the use of these assessments in my evaluation does little to help make me a better teacher. What makes me a better teacher is feedback from my principal. What makes me a better teacher is experience. What makes me a better teacher is professional development and being able to know my students. They have taken the time to know my students. It's not...
If I can interrupt you, I just want to clarify, because I work with a lot of teachers. Are you saying that you don't look at student data to help you do that?
I do look at student
Okay,
data.
just wanna-
I look at my formative student data as well as the summative data, but it gives me a general picture, I guess a place of where to start. That number that we get from BAM, that doesn't make me a better teacher. It doesn't help me know the whole child. It doesn't help me understand their circumstances. Like the girl I teach who's raising her little sister because her mom is in rehab and her dad has passed away. Or the student who's raising his brother because both parents are in jail.
I'm going to have to clarify, and I don't like to do this, especially to people that come up. You said that you do use student data, but then you're testifying that you don't use student data to help you as a teacher. And I want to be very respectful of your time up here, but do you use student data to help students when you look at their learning and stuff as you as a teacher? Do you take that in fact of this student here, they have an assessment, you see that they're deficient in an area, and you use that data to help target them? Are you saying that you don't utilize that, that's not valuable to you, or are you saying that it is valuable, that you do use that in order to help target student learning?
The data we get from FCAT in the past has done just that. It targets students as level 1s and level 2s. So here's what we do. We track those level 2s, we track them and we progress monitor them and we test them and we retest them. And so that drives their whole school career. So the whole picture here is helping them get a high school diploma, helping them graduate.
Okay, so let me get back to it, and I really am not trying to box you in, but so student data is not something that you would advocate that is utilized when we're helping students on those assessments?
Student data does help us target those students who are considered level 1 and level 2.
Okay, please continue.
So we also use that data in addition to other diagnostic tools like it's called the DAR, which helps us figure out where in the reading process that they're deficient, where are they not comprehending, because just looking at FCAT data doesn't do that. And together, those pieces are what help us diagnose our student. One piece won't do it, just like one piece for my evaluation wouldn't do it. So we support a diverse amount of things for teacher evaluation.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Maybe to get back to how you wanted to focus our time today, not on just a recitation of problems that have come up in your committee and come up in the Appropriations Committee to a great extent, but also focusing on solutions. And let me just say, as to VAM, and you mentioned VAM, I don't understand it, so I can't explain it. And my rule has always been, if you can't explain it in 15 to 20 minutes at the PTO meeting, it's an education policy that ain't going to work. But let me ask you this. What teacher evaluation system using performance data, using student performance data, does the Florida Education Association support? And can you cite me the times that they've made proposals that have supported a teacher performance system using student data? Could you cite that for me?
Recognize.
Okay. I think each local is different, and I can speak to Wakulla County, but I don't know that I can speak for other districts because they are so different. They have different models of evaluation. So the most helpful is a multi-metric piece so that we get, yes, a slice of our student test scores, and yes, feedback from our principals, and maybe even feedback from parents, or maybe even peer feedback. All of these pieces are important to help make me a better teacher, and that's the kind of system that we support. I want to be better for my students. I would say every teacher wants to be better for their students.
To your knowledge, ma'am, has the organization that you're testifying for today, the Florida Education Association, proposed a teacher evaluation system that relies in any way, shape, or form on student performance data?
We have, to my knowledge, we have not.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chair?
Sure. I'll recognize you in 1 second. If Senator Bullard and I don't want to put our speakers on the spot too much, but if you like, I'll let her finish and we'll kind of come to you. Is that okay? So go ahead and I'll let you finish.
So really what we're trying to say, what all of us have tried to say, is that there's too much testing. And when the yearbook picture company gives you these kinds of pictures, along with welcome, my name is Miss Rudd, there's too much testing. The testing process as it's currently structured does not make my students more successful or make me a better teacher. So yes, it's time for fewer and better tests.
Thank you. Senator Bullard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As someone who's run a few of those bills in the past, a peer evaluative model as well as one that is a hybrid between peer evaluation as well as student portfolio has been recommended for years and put forward by and endorsed by Florida Education Association, but I wanted to clarify that for the members of the committee because it was called into question whether or not there have been pieces of legislation or initiatives put forward, and the answer is an absolute yes.
Thank you, and thank you for coming. Thank you. Senator Mumford, and I just, again, I have to throw my 2 cents in. I thought it was interesting that I met with the Hillsborough Teachers Union, who has a very unique approach that has 30% peer evaluation, and they informed me that they no longer want to go down those routes anymore of peer evaluation, which I thought was quite unique. So, but go ahead, Senator Mumford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we all know, we've got 6 or 7 school districts, and they're all very, very diverse. Ms. Rudd, I know you work in one of the highest performing, consistently highest performing school districts in Florida, rural county, I might add. Can you describe to us basically your teacher evaluation system? Because if I'm not mistaken, your evaluation system has been used before among superintendents as example how to do it. Refresh my memory in terms of how you actually use, if you do, peer evaluation or the data that you use with your students. Just give us a little flavor for how it works.
Yes, sir.
You're recognized.
We follow the state statute, so 50% of our performance evaluation is test scores, based on test scores, student growth and learning. Right now, we have approved a model where teachers have a choice. So 49% could be principal evaluation and 1% could be parent feedback, or 40% could be principal evaluation and 10% could be professional development plan. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and thank you. Next, we have David Freeland. And I just want to remind speakers and committee members, you know, I do want to give people plenty of time here. We've got 1 hour and 15 minutes left, so, but please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senators, my name is David Freeland. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm a little new at this, and you've thrown me a little bit off my game with the changes here, but I'll see if I can put some numbers on this. I'm typically a math guy. I'm also a parent of 5th grader, and I'm the testing coordinator for my school. And I also serve as the math coach in St. Lucie County. I'd like to take this time to share my concerns about the impact excessive testing has on my school, including classroom instruction and loss of quality instructional time. Basically, the collateral damage that comes from over-testing. I have approximately 2,700 students who attend my school. From the beginning of March to the end of May, I'll have to schedule nearly 25,000 individual tests for those students.
Again, I've said this on the front. I want to give you ample time to say your case. This committee has heard a lot of stories, a lot of things. We are trying to do our best to focus on solutions and recommendations. If you have some recommendations, if you can kind of get to that point as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I guess the first thing I want to say, and I'll try and boil it down to this, is that when the superintendent asked my principal to certify that we're ready, and he asked me, the answer is find a way to get it done. And so I do that. However, that displaces a great many students and actually puts some of their graduation plans in jeopardy. You know, our credit recovery uses our computer labs. They don't just sit idle until testing time. I also pull 18 to 20 certified teachers out of classes to proctor those tests every day. So those are teachers who are not going to be in their class providing instruction. Oftentimes, we don't even have substitutes available because every school is facing those same challenges. All right, so that's why we often hear parents tell stories about my daughter or my son sat in class today watching videos, because we become almost a babysitting service for the students who aren't testing well, those who are. So I'll cut right to the chase here. Maybe I'll be happy to answer questions. Really, all of this brings to the point where it's time to put the brakes on high-stakes testing and consider other alternatives. A norm reference assessment such as the ACT, the Stanford 10, or the Iowa Test of Basic Skills provide the same or better data than our state test. I know paper and pencil tests aren't especially sexy, but they're easy to administer. They don't take weeks and weeks to get through, and they provide that data that we need to help drive our instruction.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Senator Monfort.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for coming up, I think it was 2 weeks ago. And
my pleasure.
Appreciate you coming by. Did you tell me did you testify you were a test coordinator, a math teacher, and a math coach?
If I may. I am actually, it's interesting, I was the math coach for my school, providing support to teachers. I've been moved to the testing coordinator position Our district actually just allocated $1.8 million to our full-time testing coordinator.
Maybe,
in all the
let me,
schools.
for the sake of time, if I may, Mr. Your full-time job at a school, 7 hours, 8, what,
7.5, 8.
7.5 hours. What do you do? Are you a testing coordinator full-time?
Yes, sir. I become the, if I may, I become the testing coordinator, so I schedule tests, try and arrange the technology.
Full-time.
Full-time. That's what
Okay.
I do from January to the end of the year now.
Follow, and we're trying to hurry here, but you mentioned paper and pencil, which is something I want to address. As a testing coordinator, is it just as good as a technology-based exam?
From a testing coordinator standpoint, it's actually a little better because it's easier to schedule, it's easier to get the students. I mean, I can do it in 2 days instead of over weeks of time. I would say paper and pencil and computer-based, they come with their own pros and cons, each one.
Okay. One follow-up, and that's it. You mentioned something, too, that's been a grave concern, and that is taking certified teachers out of class. At some point, you got to train them. You don't just walk in and say, go monitor this test. Everything's precise. Do you have any idea or how much that costs the district in terms of hiring substitutes for the teachers you pull out? Or more important than that, do you have a recommendation as to how we can proctor the exams at less cost?
Mr. Chairman, honestly, I can't tell you the cost. That's not something I deal with. I schedule them, and my principal makes it happen if he can. But again, you're talking 18 to 20 certified teachers who are pulled out of class, again, starting in March through the end of the year, basically. Sometimes we don't have subs. Like I said, we have the same issue across the district, so occasionally it doesn't really cost anything in that respect because we don't have subs even to cover the classes. The cost is more to what happens to the students who are in those classes where the teachers are pulled out of. As far as recommendation, honestly, really, I'd like to see less testing, but barring that, if we could even get some of our school-based personnel who are perhaps not certified teachers, but who are part of our school community to be trained. I mean, I do train them to be trained to actually proctor those tests. Would help ease that burden some.
I want to thank you. Thank you very much for coming. It's greatly appreciated.
My pleasure.
Thank you.